Hello everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we're going to learn how to create a cool magical ball effect in Adobe After Effects. We'll write expressions so that the ball automatically stays perfectly between two hands without any manual keyframing. Plus, we'll animate the scale of the ball depending on the gap between two hands. So let's start. Let's start with dragging the video footage onto the create a new composition icon at the bottom of the project panel. This will automatically create a composition with the same setting as your footage. Give our composition a clear and descriptive name so it is easy to find later. I'm also going to tidy up my project panel by organizing my asset and composition. Okay, so our goal is to place an object right between my two hands for this footage. One way to do this is to create a new shape layer, say 2000 by 2000 pixel. Then double clicking the ellipse tool will create a new circle mask on the selected layer. Now we could manually move and scale this layer to fit between my two hands throughout the video. We can hit P for position and Shift S for scale, and then add keyframe to animate those properties. While manual keyframing works for many animation, it is not ideal in this type of animation. We need precise placement and manually adjusting the position frame by frame. We want a more automated way to calculate the magical ball's position based on the hand's movement. Alright, to automate the magical ball's position, we need to track the movement of both hands. And we can use Mocha Pro for this. Click the Mocha Pro logo to open Mocha Pro. Now grab the pen tool and draw a shape around the wrist area of your top hand. Let's rename this layer with something meaningful like T_wrist for top wrist. Hit the track backward button. This will take a moment while Mocha tracks the wrist movement. Now let's track forward. I'll speed up the tutorial so you don't have to waste your time. Okay, the top wrist is tracked. Next, we'll track the wrist of your top hand. First, make sure the wheel icon is unchecked. Then select the S-spline tool and draw another shape around the bottom wrist. We'll start by tracking backward. Once that is finished, we'll click the track forward button. You can notice we have a tracking error here because the wrist goes off screen. To fix this, we need to add a couple of manual keyframes here. Place a keyframe right where the tracking area disappears off screen. Now zoom in and scrub through the timeline. Around this point, the wrist reappears, so drag the shape back to where it should be. As you can see, Mocha Pro automatically creates a new keyframe. If you move the time scrubber around this section, you will see the shape is now animated. Make sure the tracking shape maintains the same alignment with the wrist, both at the beginning and end of the keyframe. Let's double check the shape's position. You might notice we need an additional keyframe in the middle to smooth out the animation. Since the wrist is back on screen here, we can now click the track forward button again. Great, the tracking is complete. Let's rename this layer to B_wrist as in bottom wrist. Now save your Mocha Pro project. Go to File and click on the Exit button to return to After Effects. Alright, we have finished tracking in Mocha Pro. Now we need to transfer the tracking data to null objects in After Effects. Let's start by creating a new null object and name it as T_wrist as in top wrist. Let's duplicate this null object using Ctrl D and rename this copy as B_wrist as in bottom wrist. Select your footage layer and expand the tracking data properties. Click on the Create Track Data button. This will open the layer control panel. Here we'll choose the tracking layer that we want to export. I'm going to select the top wrist layer. Next, from the Export option drop down, choose Transform. Then in the Export to drop down, select the T_wrist null object. If you are unsure which layer to select, you can use the layer number for reference. Now click the Apply Export button. If you now scrub through the timeline, you'll see the T_wrist null object now as the position data from the Mocha Pro top wrist layer that we tracked earlier. We'll repeat this process for bottom wrist too. Click on the Create Track Data button, choose the bottom wrist layer, select Transform, choose the B_wrist null object from the Export to drop-down, and finally click on the Apply Export button. As expected, when you scrub through the timeline, the B_wrist null object now has the tracking data from the Mocha Pro. To make this null object easier to see, I will change their color to yellow. Okay, let's create one more null object for our magical element. We'll name this one magic_element. Now we need to make the position and scale of this magic_element null dependent on the position of the T_wrist and B_wrist nulls. To ensure the magic element null stays precisely between the top wrist and bottom wrist nulls, we first need to calculate the distance between them. Imagine the vertical distance between the top and bottom wrist is 10 pixels. Then the Y position of our magic element null should be half of their distance, which is 10 divided by 2, and the result is 5, with the addition of the Y position of the top wrist null, right? To simplify this, we can just add the Y position of the top wrist and bottom wrist nulls and then divide the result by 2. We'll use expression to automate this calculation, which will ensure that we don't have to manually keyframe the magic element's Y position. Okay, let's select each null object one by one and press P to reveal their position properties. Since we want to control the magic element's position using expression, so we have to hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch icon next to the position property of the magic element null, which will let us write expression for this property. Let me zoom in so you can see the expression clearly. Here the transform.position is the default expression for the position property. First, let's create a variable called top wrist. We are only interested in the Y position, so use the pick whip tool and drag it to the Y position property of the top wrist null. This ensures our top wrist variable holds the Y position value of the top wrist null. Using the same method, create another variable called bottom wrist. Use the pick whip tool to link it to the Y position property of the bottom wrist null. Now that we have Y position value for both of the nulls, we can add them together and store the result in another variable called gap. Now it is time to set the value for transform.position. The transform.position has two values, x and y. Since we are only automating the Y position and we want to manually control the X position, we'll set the first value, the X position, to transform.position and inside the bracket add 0. This will let us adjust the X position manually. For the second value, the Y position, we'll use the gap divided by 2. Now it should work, but as you can see, it is not working because I mistakenly used subtraction instead of addition here. Let's change it to addition, and you can see the magic element null now automatically maintains its Y position between the top wrist and bottom wrist nulls. Great! Now we can attach any layer to this magic element null object. For example, let's create a sphere shape. Position this sphere between the two hands. Now use the pick whip tool to parent the sphere layer to the magic element null object. If you play the animation now, you will see the sphere perfectly stay between the two hands. Also remember, we set the X position to be manually adjustable, so you can now change the X position as needed. However, the Y position is automatically calculated based on the two nulls Y position. This means we have successfully completed our first task, which is keeping the sphere centered between the two hands. Okay, now let's get the scale expression working perfectly. Alright, to make the magic element null scale automatically based on the distance between the two hands, we need to write an expression for the scale property, right? Select the null and press S to reveal the scale property. Hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch icon to start writing the expression. As you can see, the transform.scale is the default expression for the scale property. We need both of the variables from the position expression that we have written earlier. Select the null and press U twice quickly to show all the animated properties including the expression. And let's copy the top wrist and bottom wrist variables. Let's paste them into the scale expression. Now create a scale value variable by subtracting the top wrist from the bottom wrist. We'll then multiply the scale value by the transform.scale. As you can notice here, the sphere is way too big now. So to fix this, we need to normalize the scale value. Put the subtraction in the first bracket and let's multiply it by a small decimal value. We can start with 0.005. I think it is still too big. So let's try 0.002. Perfect. The sphere now scales dynamically with the hand's distance. And yes, we have achieved this without any single keyframe. The animation is now naturally responding to the hand movement. Congratulations. Okay, great. Now let's add some visual effects and replace the sphere with a more magical look. I'll be using some pre-rendered effect from AEJuice to quickly make the effect. While you can create this effect from scratch, using pre-made asset is a great way to boost your workflow and focus on delivering high quality result quickly. If you are serious about making money as a VFX or motion graphic artist, streamlining your process with tools like AEJuice can be a great game changer. I have included links in the description with huge discount. You should check it out. Alright, let's grab an effect from AEJuice and drag it into our composition. We'll set the in and out point using I and O on the keyboard. Then change the blending mode of the VFX layer to add. This makes the effect additive so it glows nicely. Now reposition the effect so it is centered between the hands. It's a bit too large, so I will scale it down. I'll also hide or delete the sphere layer. Let's play the animation to see how it looks. The scale is still a bit too big, so I will shrink it down further. I think that is much better now. We now have an automatically scaling and position VFX element, all without any keyframe. A single effect is not enough for a truly magical look, so we can layer multiple effects. I'll drag another AEJuice effect into the composition, change its blending mode to add, scale it down and reposition it. Finally, I will parent this to the magic element null object. If we play the animation, it looks good, but adding too many layers like this can make our composition messy. Let me show you a more organized way to manage this effect. Delete the last effect layer we added, select the existing effect layer, press Ctrl Shift and C to precompose it. I'll name this precomposition as lighting_precomp. Make sure you select leave all attribute and not move all attribute, as we want to keep the original scale of the effect layer. Now double click on the lighting precomp to open it. This is where we'll add all our VFX layers. Let me isolate the new effect layer so you can see what's happening clearly. Now we can add as many VFX layers as we want to this precomp. And they will all be controlled by the main composition's magic element null. No need to repeat the parenting, scale or positioning anymore. Since the new effect is shorter than our main video clip, let's duplicate this using Ctrl+D and spread the copies across the timeline. Because it is a series of short electric burst clip, it looks like the hands are now struggling to create something, right? Now since we have precomposed all the effect layers, we can simply scale the lighting_precomp layer in the main composition to scale all the effect at once. Let's go back into the precomp and unhide the original effect. Back in the main composition, you might notice only one effect is visible. That is because I have made a mistake. Let's go back to the pre-comp. You'll see that all the effect layers have their blending mode set to normal. Change all of them to add. Now if you go back to the main composition, all the effect will be visible as expected. Let's take this effect to the next level by creating a sphere from the existing lightning. Go to the Effect and Preset panel and search for CC Lens. Drag the CC Lens onto the lighting_precomp layer. Adjust the size of the CC Lens to create a sphere effect now. When you play the animation, you will see the electric effect transform into a glowing sphere. To make it even more interesting, duplicate the lighting_precomp layer using Ctrl+D. Since both of the layers are referencing from the same pre-composition, any changes you make in one will affect the other. The solution is to make them all unique. To make them unique, right-click on one of the pre-comp layers, go to Reveal and select Reveal in Source Project. To clarify, both pre-comp layers in our main composition are linked to this lighting_precomp composition in our project panel. Now duplicate the lighting_precomp composition in the project panel using Ctrl+D. Select one of the effect layers in the main composition, and now while holding down the Alt or Option key on the Mac, drag the duplicated composition from the project panel onto the selected precomp in the main composition. Now release your mouse button. This will replace the precomp and make the two layers unique. Let's remove the CC Lens effect from the second effect composition we just replaced. Now, if you isolate each precomp layer, you will see top layer has the electric sphere effect, while the bottom layer has only the electric effect. Isolate both precomp layers at once and you will have a more complex and interesting effect. Let's stop the isolation. Since both layers have their blending mode set to add, the center is too bright. Change the blending mode of the one layer to screen and keep the other at add. Play the animation again. Now the effect layer is spreading too much, so let's shrink it down. We can also go back into the electric precomp and duplicate the shorter clips to make the glow even more intense. Press Tab key to navigate back to the main composition, and now play the animation again. The glow inside the sphere is still too bright, so let's mask it. Isolate the precomp layer and double click on the ellipse tool to create a mask. Make sure you enable the mask visibility button in the composition preview, otherwise you can't see the mask. Double click on the mask to show the rectangle controller. Scale the mask down while holding the Alt and Shift key for uniform scaling. Press M to open the mask properties and select Subtract from the drop down. It looks too sharp, right? Press F to show only the mask feather controls and increase the feather. You can also scale up the mask. Once you are happy, let's play the entire animation again and check the result. To add some extra glow, search for glow in the effect and preset panel and apply it to the lighting layer. Experiment with the glow setting to get the desired result. We can keep refining this effect further, but I think I'll stop this video here. In the next part, I will complete this tutorial. In the meantime, feel free to finish the effect and upload the result on your YouTube channel or TikTok or whatever you want. Send me the link. I would love to see what you have created. Thank you for watching and good night.